Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I'm your host, Mike Veerman, and I'm here with my friend and trusty producer all the way back from Korea, Max. How's it going?
Feeling good, man. Konnichiwa.
We are also here with our pop
Can
culture.
I say that?
Sure, why not? Also here with us is our pop culture aficionado, Shane Christian Cunningham. Shane, what's up?
Arigato.
Oh, man. Guys, the three of us have not been in a room together like this in quite some time.
Yeah, you know, I demanded that we pod this afternoon because we're going to be hanging out later tonight watching the Raptors game.
That's
You're
right.
invited, Shane. Is that Mike Spicy?
Yeah.
And don't worry about it. And but I was like, I need to get, the Korea trip out of the way so I can have a normal conversation with you, because otherwise tonight we just wouldn't be talking to each other.
We'd be avoiding conversations. So it's great to be back in a room with you guys.
Love it.
I recently guested on a podcast called Heist Podcast, which Max, you've also been a part of, with our friends Matt and Simon down in Los Angeles. Listen to that pod. It's great.
I haven't had the chance to listen, though.
It's great. It is awesome. Mike is an amazing guest. He tells some awesome stories.
Okay.
And it's true. And Mike, he was very diplomatic in the opening of the interview. He says, he's like, it's called the Mike on Mike podcast, but Shane is the most entertaining. Max is the most famous. I'm just Mike. And he was very self-deprecating.
Yeah. And then they made fun of me for pulling my Canadian bullshit.
Right.
Yeah.
What, were they putting me down? They were like, you're the most entertaining.
No,
I wanna
not
know.
everything's about you, Shane.
Mindfulness, Shane.
I am. I'm mindful of how people put me down behind my back. I have to listen to this pod.
No, they were great. They were fantastic. I haven't listened back to it yet, but thank you, Max, for the kind words. So listen to that if you get a chance to check it out. Also today on the show, we are talking to Dashboard Confessional, Chris Carrabba.
The Dashboard Confessional.
Yeah, so we'll get to him in a little bit. But before we do that, we didn't bury the lead, but we're getting to it now. I've been in California for like 11 days. Max, you've been on the other side of the world, in South Korea, hanging out with all of our medal-winning Canadian Olympians.
Yeah.
And Shane?
What have you been doing?
I took over the Twitter.
No, that's true. And you were awesome
You
at
did
it.
a great job.
Well, I was
thanks.
on the road. I would check in on the Twitter, and I saw you just interacting with people, tweets and replies, and you were being hilarious.
I was kind of flooding. My plan was, because I've been following this guy named Gary V, if you don't know him. But his whole thing is he's a motivational kind of business guru. And he's like, reply to everyone. He's like, he has 3 million followers and he replies to everyone.
Wow.
So I was like, I'm just going to interact and engage and,
How did you find that experience?
It was fun. I had the best time doing it.
Oh, good.
Yeah.
And I think our followers really enjoyed interacting with you. Everybody it had such a great sort of response.
The
People-
nut is right when it comes to this stuff. He's been encouraging us a lot more interaction on social media. So
Yeah.
the nut's been telling us about this for
I hung
forever.
out with the nut the other night.
Oh, yeah.
I did, yeah. We'll get to that in a bit.
We'll get to that in a second. By the way, though, we got an email today from Webmaster Dan with our numbers through the roof in Q1 in 2018.
But
Wow.
did you notice
I didn't look at it very closely.
the
so no.
Q4,
Yeah.
I don't know what these numbers mean, but the Q4 went down a notch before we went up. And when it was down, that was the week the nut did the dessert.
But I want to take this moment to tell our listeners, thank you very much. And also tell your friends, subscribe, rate the podcast, do all those things that you need to do.
It means the world to us because if those quarters or whatever they just said keep going up, it means we get to keep doing this. And the kind people at Much keep getting us cool opportunities.
Yeah.
So thank you to all of you who listen.
So, speaking of the trip to Korea and speaking of the nut, he was on the trip to Korea. And if you follow our
Deservedly so.
No, you know what? He did a great job.
I know.
Yeah. Why are you looking like that?
Oh, just because he's been giving us flack, obviously, for talking negatively about him on the pod.
Sure. Yeah, because we cut and killed him last week's episode.
Yeah.
I just want to say, I do think he did deserve to be there.
Yeah.
And it's just playful teasing.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay. But
Continue.
That's literally like when somebody's being held hostage.
it's like, say the line.
Yeah.
There's like a gun to the head.
Well, I don't want to hurt anyone's feelings, and I felt
Yeah.
like we hurt him somehow.
No, he was cool about it, I think. I think he enjoyed it.
Well, here's what we should say. So right before we all left away on vacations and sort of split off for a couple weeks, our last episode, we made some jokes about the nut.
Yeah.
And I printed off some texts from him also.
Oh, good.
So
Is that for the
maybe
dessert?
he's less okay to me than he is to you. But
Oh, you see.
Before we get to those texts, I just wanted to clarify, we love the nut. And the whole gag is that he's uber successful.
Yeah, well, if you listen to Bill Simmons' podcast, they always make fun of their agent, James Baby Doll Dixon, in a way that we make fun of the nut. And James Baby Doll Dixon also represents Jimmy Kimmel, Stephen Colbert. He's a very successful person, and all they do is trash him. All right, so I've been...
Wait, we're not going to hear these emails? Or are you saying
thought
them for
we were
dessert?
I could say him for the end. Do
Do you want to talk about this on the dessert?
Sure.
All right.
So, the trip to Korea was crazy. I've been home for about a week now, I guess. And every single person who I've run into on the street, like random strangers, just go, Korea. And I tell the story. And I've told the story so many times. And I think if anybody's been following on our socials, they kind of get a sense of what happened. We partied with the Canadian Olympians. Tessa and Scott introduced us at the show at Canada House. We got to go to a hockey game. We got to go to speed skating. We ate a bunch of Korean food. We sang karaoke with the Olympians till 5 a.m. It was all very surreal and amazing. And of all the things we've done in the band, this is sticks out as by far the most unique thing we've done. Because we've played the Junos a couple times, which is thrilling, big festivals, which is an honor. Coachella, of course. But this was kind of a standalone event for us. So it was amazing. But do you guys have any questions about the trip?
Well, I heard, and this could be a bit of broken telephone, but I heard that Tessa Virtue was the biggest Arkells and especially Max fan. And Scott kind of threw a bit of a hissy fit and he was like, I'm out of here. And he didn't want to party with you guys.
No.
Because he got jealous.
No, that's not true. That's not true at all. Okay. So Scott is fucking rad and he just wanted to party. So I think Tessa could be the Prime Minister of Canada. She is so good to everybody. She's so smart, but very self-aware. I think she realized that as an Olympian, you have this window of time where everyone's thinking about you. And then after the Olympics are over, they kind of fade into the background. And she's like, she said to me, in a couple weeks, no one will care about me. She said she was very self-aware about her circumstance. And I think she's being a little modest. I
still think of Elvis Stoico from time to time.
Yeah, that's right. I think she's going to live on in the minds
mostly
and
when you're alone in your bedroom.
Yes, masturbating. Just so we're clear.
But she was a little bit more I'm going to continue to take on the role as the face of Canada here and be on, because they were the biggest celebrities in the entire country, basically, at this point. In Korea, let alone Canada.
And in America, The Ringer did a huge piece on them.
Yeah. So she was, I think, a little more up for that. And Scott, who has been up for that for the months leading up to the Olympics, and he's amazing and a sweetheart, was I kind of just want to go party with my fellow Olympians right now. So there was a one thing where there was an interview that maybe Tessa was just going to do with us. And then Scott was like, no, I'll do it with you. But if I were Scott, I'd be out of there. I would not be doing any work for anybody. I won my 2 gold medals and let me party.
Do you think he was a little jealous of you?
He's 100% not jealous of me. Mm-hmm. And also,
he's seen Max skate.
He's seen my body. A lot of people ask, so give me the goods, Tess and Scott.
That was my next question.
Yeah, no, I can't imagine that they're dating. I mean, maybe they're fooling everybody, but imagine playing sports with the same person since you were 7 years old and seeing them every day. How could you, since you're 7, how could you date someone like that?
I totally buy that it is a sibling-esque or working relationship.
Yeah, it's a working relationship, one.
With pure respect and love and all of that stuff.
But also has this brother-sister dynamic where it's you've been through so much together.
You know their flaws.
Yeah.
At some point, it's just kind of oh yeah, when they do that annoys the shit out of me.
Yeah, it's you love them. Yeah. And you have the deepest connection with them. And again, because you've seen everything together. But you don't want to be romantic with that person. No.
Okay, another sports analogy relating to their relationship. What base do you think he's gotten to in their entire run as a couple?
It's a good question. I couldn't tell you.
Do you think he's gotten to first base with her?
Is that kissing?
It is.
I think he got to first base in their routine.
Yeah,
I think it was pretty
That
intense.
was second base.
Yeah, so you said
what's the one where you're eating someone out? I guess that's third base at least. If that's second base, come on.
No, it's third base, yeah. So you just answered the question. Third base.
But do you think they've ever drunkenly made out?
I have no idea.
This is a think question. Do you think? I'm not saying do you know.
If you asked me if I were to bet on it, I'd say yes. I'd bet on it.
What about you, Mike?
Sure. They were so young together. They probably experimented the way people experiment. Yeah. I mean, we're really taking... Webmaster Dan just exploded laughing.
All right, what else? Any other questions about Korea?
I had one. I saw on your stories and whatnot that she was singing with the band.
Yeah.
Can she sing?
She didn't really grab the mic. She was actually very self-conscious about it. Her favorite band is Hall & Oates.
Oh.
And so we brought her up for like the last part of "You Make My Dreams Come True." But I think she was kind of nervous to come up, like because she was hanging with manager Ash, and they were like having a dance party side stage. And manager Ash is like, she was like very nervous about coming.
Well, Hall or Oates, I'm not sure which one, tweeted at her.
Yeah, I think Daryl Hall did.
Wow.
Or one of them.
Who's the Daryl Hall and who is the Adam Oates of Tessa and
Adam
Scott?
Oates? Is that his name?
Is that the hockey player?
That's the hockey player, yeah.
Brett Hall and Adam Oates.
Brett Hall.
What about Bobby Hall?
Bobby Hall, that's Brett Hall's father.
Oh, okay. I thought it was his brother.
He's the original Hall.
Is it Hull or Hall?
Hull, I think.
All I know is that Hockey Bros come here for the hockey content. And we are happy to deliver.
Have you heard this new sports pod?
I know the whole second verse of that song.
Because we played together.
It's the only verse I know of that song because when we used to tour with you, you pull me up at the end of the set and then I'd wait for my second verse.
Yeah.
That and Run to You. Those are only I know the second verse of those two songs. That's I only learn what I have to.
Yeah, hey man, I hear you. As a result, I don't know the second verse. And I've been singing for the last 10 years.
Every band you've ever toured with, you take the second verse.
Mumble my way through it.
Yeah.
But the Canadian women's hockey team was great. It was funny. Like we did a cover of "Ironic" by Alanis Morissette. The first time we ever did that. People loved it.
Are you stressed out when you have to learn the words to a cover song?
Yeah. To make it worse, though, is that there are some songs that. So, like for instance, everyone knows "Ironic," right? Like that song.
Could you give us a little bit?
An old man turned 98 or whatever, right?
Yeah.
That song.
I think I need a little more. I'm just kidding.
But here's the thing, is that I didn't grow up with that song in the way that most other people did. It just like wasn't on my radar.
Right.
And so I'm learning the lyrics. I go on the internet and read them through and try to remember the rhymes and stuff. But I don't really nail the phrasing in a way that like Alanis would nail the phrasing. And it really drives the guys in my band crazy that I'm basically ruining the song.
What would be an example?
So it's like, there are certain parts of the flow of the song. So it's like, I go, an old man turned 98, he won the lottery and died the next day. It's like, but she would sing it like, an old man turned 98. Like
she's giving it time to breathe. You're connecting all the damn words.
There's a flow and there's a weight, and I fucked that up. And the guy, and I did the same thing when we covered "Sabotage" by the Beastie Boys, and Mike D is a big Beastie Boys fan, and he was so furious with me.
Just let him sing it.
Well, that's what ended up happening. I was like, fuck, man, I'll do the first verse and you take the rest, man. and so that made him happy.
I did see that Tessa Virtue, Canadian superstar, follows the Nut on Instagram.
Well, this is it. Is that
Shane's making the best face right now.
Is that the trip was a success for many reasons for the Nut. And, he got to he got to hold the gold medal. He got to schmooze with like a bunch of Olympians. And we kind of made friends with Tessa Virtue. She was like very like sweet and easy to be around. And manager Ash and Birchall were, they're having good hangs. And then he got the follow from Tessa Virtue, which makes him so happy.
Made me happy for him.
Do you have the follow though?
Oh yeah, that's how we got it originally.
Okay,
yeah,
nice.
That's how we got them to do the video. So anyway, we feel really lucky about the whole experience. And again, Tessa and Scott have been very generous. Like they didn't need to do that video announcing the Tim Hortons field trip, but they did. And then they didn't need to like introduce us at the Canada House, but they did. She came to the second show that we did as well, and that's when she came up on stage. Very cool. So I feel like I don't want to bug her about anything else. And you guys were saying, let's get them on the pod today. And I do want to get them on the pod, but I don't want to bug her this moment because she probably is doing a bunch of other press in the building. But then John Popoulos just texted me saying, could I get Sarah, his pregnant wife, is about to have a baby. And she's a huge fan of Scott and Tessa and was wondering if I could get Tessa and Scott to give a shout out video to Sarah. So do I go and do that?
Could I have one for my wife also? She's pregnant too.
While you're at it, so I don't know if I'm going to make that ask. We'll see.
Okay, I have more questions about Olympic stuff.
Yeah, okay.
So was there any like stigma around like if a German guy went to sneak into the Canadian house to the party? Was it like, get out of here?
No. Everyone
countries intermingled?
Not a ton, but like if you saw someone out in the Olympic Village, like everyone was very friendly. It wasn't like it was like roving gangs or anything like that.
Were Olympians like kind of hooking up?
Not that I could tell, but who knows?
How many followers did you gain?
I don't know. I think it did go up though.
3,500 followers.
Oh, you've been keeping track?
Yeah.
Oh, awesome. Thank you.
Really?
On Instagram, yeah.
They went up 3,500 after the Olympics.
Yeah.
Well, the thing you appreciate about the Olympics...
I suspect juicing.
is that you really appreciate how small slice of the cultural pie that music gets compared to the Olympics. Like everyone loves music, and there's a couple of massive superstars, but generally speaking, it's like the percentage of the population that's reading like music blogs is actually quite small. But then it's the Olympics. Every single person is watching the Olympics.
Oh yeah.
And so to be a part of that is like, that's what,
Do you pay for your Instagram followers?
No, of course not.
I don't know. Okay.
Was that the last Olympic question?
Those were the main things on my mind. Yeah.
So how's your trip to California? How's the Warriors game? I was so jealous.
It was awesome. It was great. I mean, I don't have much to I didn't have any like sort of world famous Olympians along the way, but
world famous wife.
Honestly, I can only say amazing and kind things about her because she planned this whole trip. We started in San Francisco and then made our way all the way down the coast. Yeah. So we were going to drive the coast highway all the way from San Francisco to Los Angeles, but there was a big landfall. So a section of the highway was shut down. So we had to go up through those mountains.
Oh, wow.
But we thought it would be like a shot through like the hills.
Yeah.
We started going up in like a zigzag motion. And you're going up like to a crazy altitude now where you're like 100 feet above the water and there's no railings on any of these roads. And literally all that's separating you from like 100-foot fall is
a little patch of dirt.
A little patch of dirt. And once it dawned on us that can't go around, we've come too far, we genuinely were just like, terrified, and she drove it the whole, she's the real
hero,
brave. She's the real hero in our family, and I'm in the passenger side though, so I am literally looking down a cliff, and I had to just keep looking straight ahead. We had music when we started, but then we had to turn it off because it was so we had to concentrate, because if a car comes around, it's like you can't just move out of the way because you fall off the cliff.
This is getting me
anxious. And it literally took an hour to get through the whole thing. There were moments where we were like, we're going to fucking die up here. Like, we are going to die up here, and this is how it ends. And I do have a funny video of us just like saying our goodbyes to everybody so that after the car rolls off the hill, they'll find the phone intact.
Oh, good.
And find the last
What
video.
did you say to me and Shane?
You guys didn't make the list.
Oh.
But the point of all this is to say that Danica literally planned out every spot we were going to stay at. She planned the route. She rented the cars. She did everything. And I basically got to just show up and enjoy the whole trip. And she's the fucking best.
What a lady.
Yeah. Is there anything else we need to catch up on before we get to some Chris Carrabba?
I think that's the good stuff, man.
That's it. So you had a great time at the Olympics.
Yeah.
You going to go back in 4 years?
2 years, man. Let's go to Tokyo.
Summer Olympics.
Why not?
Man, It's pretty exciting.
Who knows? But let's get to the dashboard.
All right, so we interviewed Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional. He has an album out called Crooked Shadows.
Out of all the rockers of that era and that emo scene, he is by far the most like recognizable face. Like just in the popular culture.
And
like,
it hasn't changed.
And no, it hasn't changed at all. Yeah, he's aged nicely.
Who do you think has aged better, him or Jared Leto?
Jared Leto, you might be more likely to say because he's better looking, but I think it's a close call.
I have a bunch of Dashboard fans tune into this, and they were just before we get to the interview, it's like, well, Jared Leto's better looking.
Well, that's undeniable, right? Jared Leto's probably like the best looking man on earth.
That's true.
Yeah, that's pretty accurate.
But Chris Carrabba, I mean, like, he's a hunk, and he looks great. I think he's like 44 or something.
Yeah, let's not cry for Chris Carrabba. He's living a really great life.
Yeah, being the second best looking guy in the world is pretty good.
Yeah, exactly. But yeah, it was real cool. You sat in for this one, Maxie. Yep. Shane actually did a digital dessert with Chris, and that will be up at some point in the future.
Yeah, he freaks me out a little bit. He's eerily calm at all times.
Yeah, he has a very nice...
To make him laugh is actually scary, because it's like, whoa, I didn't think you had it in you to even... laugh, and then he goes straight from a crazy laugh to eerily calm again. He threw me off, like of all people.
All right, so this interview took place really early in the morning. Came in, we sat in with him. Like Shane said, he's very sort of eerily calm, and he moves at his own pace, and he's a very thoughtful guy. And it was cool to sit down with him because I know he means a lot to a lot of people, including my sister-in-law, Courtney. She's a huge fan.
Well, I remember Danica was a big fan in high school.
Oh man, yeah, totally. Well, it was funny because it was like, I was like, oh yeah, Dashboard's coming. Like, we're going to do an interview. And it's gotten to the point now, like, where we're doing this all the time. It's like not necessarily like a point of conversation. And so I just kind of said that flippantly. And both of them were like, what? And got like super excited.
And then you emailed me and said, we got to do this one.
Pretty much. Yeah. Actually, one thing off the top of this interview for our listeners is that when we sat down to do this, almost right away, Chris requested that we switch sides because he initially sat to the right of Max and I. And the reason he asked to switch sides with us is because he has difficulty hearing in his left ear. And maybe if you're a big Dashboard fan, you already knew that, but Max and I didn't. So we're like, oh, like what happened with that? And that sort of ends up opening up the interview. So that's what you're going to hear right off the top. All right, you guys want to get to him?
Let's do it.
hear great out of this here. So.
Oh, do you want to? We can flip it.
Wait, is that okay?
Yeah.
Thanks.
No
Is
worries.
that touring issue
that-
for you?
Engine that exploded when I was a kid.
Oh, seriously?
Yeah.
We're rolling, by the way.
Oh, yeah? Yeah.
So out of your left ear, you have difficulty hearing because of an engine that exploded when you were a child?
Yeah, we my uncle and I were putting like a new engine in my motorcycle, and we started it up and it exploded.
Jesus.
And that was that. And there was no damage to besides my eardrum.
How old were you?
6, I think.
Whoa.
So you've just been living with it the whole time?
Yeah.
Wow. For a musician, that's crazy to be down an ear.
Yeah, I'm not totally down. I just it's not the most precise.
Yeah, because that's like an old person move. You're like, oh, actually, can you stand on this side?
Yeah. Yeah.
This one's a little wonky.
Yeah.
Well, going back sort of a bit since we started at 6 years old, you grew up in Florida.
No, I grew up in Connecticut. I moved to Florida around 16 or 17. Something
Oh, so you're a
like
teenager
that.
already when you moved there.
Yeah, I was. Yeah.
Is that a tough age to move?
Yeah, it's not a great age to move. But when you do move and you find out that like, you know, if you're a skateboarder and you find out you can skate all year, and then there's like kids that are in bands, and like maybe a girl will ask you to study and they want to study at the beach, like in a bathing suit.
That's not bad.
It's not like this in Connecticut.
No, it eases the blow a little.
Well, I guess in Connecticut, what did your sort of neighborhood look like? What did your parents do?
Well, we lived in a walk-up apartment. My mom was pretty sharp. She was like, she called it rich adjacent. We always lived in like these. We weren't, you know, we didn't have a lot of money, but we always lived like in an area that would be in a good school district and things like that. And so it's one of those things. My brother and I were like, we didn't know we were poor till we were grown-ups.
Interesting.
Yeah.
See, you didn't quite feel it. It was just the reality of the situation.
We just were clueless. Looking back, it's pretty obvious. But
Why'd you move to Florida?
my mom got a job.
Oh, wow.
We moved a lot. You know, single mom, trying to better our lives all the time, and so she got a job as the director of a home for abused kids and kids that whose parents were drug addicts, and it was this incredible place, and it was an incredible learning experience because we were there a lot. You know, this town that we moved to was a relatively affluent town.
Boca Raton?
Yeah, so to be in that town, but far from the trappings of what living in a town like that could be, was probably the best thing that could have happened to us. I think we would have stumbled into this. Well, we wouldn't have ended up in that town anyway if she hadn't gotten that job. But, you know, if we'd ended up in this town with this areas of magnificent wealth, we would have suddenly known how poor we were, you know? And also, we might have fallen into the trappings of like, you know, caring about this crap that isn't important at all.
Like these materials things and...
Yeah, but instead we moved for this job my mother got where these kids were not children of people with big yachts. You know,
Exactly.
They were lucky to be alive, really.
Sure.
And it was pretty incredible.
Was she is she musical? Was music a big part of your family growing up?
Yeah, my mother's a musician. She's a piano player and a singer. But she also filled the house with music. I mean, there was music being played constantly in our house. And she has pretty eclectic taste. And then she would be very interested in the things that my brothers and I got into. She would listen to the bands, not like grudgingly listen to the bands that we were into, but like really kind of like
Interested in what they were doing.
like get excited about it. She's an active music fan.
What? 'Cause I thought you grew up in Florida, and there's that sort of Florida punk scene,
Yeah.
sort of ground zero. What was the scene in Connecticut? Maybe you weren't into it because you moved when you were 16 or 17, but what did that look like?
Where I was, it was like non-existent. And I
Okay.
was at Hartford, and I think everything that was happening that was cool in music was New Haven, which is relatively close, but at that age, no car, no public transit, might as well have been 1,000 miles away. And everybody seemed to be, it was weird, because everybody seemed to be into the music their parents were into. Like they were all into Hendrix and The Dead. And I thought that was weird. I like those bands a lot. I love those bands.
Yeah.
But there was no like sense of discovery. It was just like, oh, well, my parents listen to this, I'll listen to it too. And then I moved down to Florida, and I'd started skateboarding in Connecticut, and in the skateboard culture, music is a vibrant part of it. In the skate videos and in the magazines with the reviews and all that stuff, and that's how I discovered music. And there was no one that listened to the kind of music I listened to when I lived in Connecticut. And then I moved to Florida and found.
Were you like, this is the best?
Yeah, it
this
was
is
like
my
the best.
home?
Yeah.
These are my people.
These are my people. And it was in short order that, and I grew up in the same area as like the kids that would start Newfound Glory and Shia Lude and Poison the Well and all these bands that would go on from Florida to be successful. And we worked really hard together to create this music scene. And I think we benefited from the fact that we were really geographically isolated. To be so far south in Florida, it's really not cost effective for bigger bands to come all the way down there, to play for, frankly, the few kids that were actually there that were massive music fans. I mean, it was a big by our standards, because it was like a homegrown, homespun local scene where, local shows would have 1,000 kids. But then the big shows would also have 1,000 kids because there was only 1,000 kids that were listening to music. But we all worked really hard together, and what I'm most proud of, I think, is the fact that so many of us are still making music and working at it together. Newfound Glory, like Chad worked on our new record with us a little bit, and now we all live in a different state, but we all live there. It's like all these same, like The Further Seems Forever and Newfound Glory and Yellow Card, and it's a long list of, we've relocated, but we've stayed in the same neighborhood again.
Yeah. Well, a part of your story and sort of the big part of the narrative is that you were teaching, and then obviously this happened. Was teaching, and I guess becoming sort of like a career musician, was the ambition always to make music a career, and sort of you were teaching because it was steady and viable? Or was it like you were doing music and it was like, hey, this thing's kind of happening and I'm going to leave this?
I think I was starting to become a teacher because I wanted to be a teacher. But it was the one career path that I saw that gave you like enormous amounts of time off that I could go off and
skate in the summers.
That's right. Well, I could go off and do these tours, and so I was not delusional. I thought like, well, I love music. I want to play music. I want to tour. Of course, I'll never be. This will never be my career, but I love it and I want to do it. And so I thought teaching was going to be rewarding in and of itself, but also gave me the opportunity to have a whole summer off where I could just go out and play shows with the band I was in, whichever band that was happened to be.
Yeah.
And I worked in the elementary school and the middle school for a long time. I started working there in high school and through college, and I was a preschool teacher, and then I ran the after school program, and I was a special needs aide. But I never finished my student teaching. Because that's when the band
it all started happening.
And one thing that I think about all the time is that I wanted to stop and I wanted to wait and do my student teaching. So I was already working as a teacher. It's this weird anomaly at this period where it was really hard for schools to hire teachers that just weren't teachers. They don't pay well, very well in Florida for teachers. So if you had enough credit hours and so, you could work basically under somebody else's license. So I was working effectively as a teacher, and I had all these great things like insurance.
Yeah,
which was the first time I ever had insurance, and
the last
a salary, and it seemed like ridiculous, like that I would run from that because my band started to do well because it just seemed like this weird impossibility.
It's not sustainable, it would seem, if you think about it logically.
Right. So I had this vice principal that said to me, you know, I was starting to, I was like still working there and it's getting like write-ups in Rolling Stone. And my vice principal was like, you got to go. And I was like, well, I can't go. I mean, I've got insurance here and I
Got a salary.
And I got to finish my student teaching and I want to have a degree and all that stuff. And she's like, look, this was a wonderful thing she did. She says, I'll guarantee you your job for a year. And I hope I never see you again.
That's so sweet.
Yeah.
That's
Yeah.
amazing.
Yeah.
And you never went back.
And I didn't go back. No, I got lucky.
Well, with that, like, I mean, sort of the ascension and your success, is there anything that felt like it happened too quick or anything you would do over?
No, it looked to the outsider like it happened really quickly. But I was touring, I probably did 2.5 years of average like 300 days of the year before I had a record deal.
Interesting.
Before I had any real press, you know, so to speak. And so
you were already grinding and doing all of that stuff.
and it was my fan base is homespun. It's from the ground up. And so it looked real fast if you weren't aware of how slow it went.
So nothing felt overwhelming because I was looking through history and it was like 2002 and it's like there's all these awards and it's like holy, it just seemed like a lot of things were going on. So there's nothing. You don't look back on anything and go, oh man, I would have done this a little bit differently, or it all feels like it was going at an appropriate pace.
There are things I wish I'd done differently, but not from that era.
Okay, what era?
Later, I wish I had trusted my own instincts more than the direction I was being given a little later on.
Fascinating.
Though I will say I was eager to learn and I was surrounded by people that were inarguably experts at doing this thing that I'm doing by instinct. I'm not an expert, you know, I think the thing that's actually benefited me the most is that like I'm almost a great songwriter. And maybe I will be one day, you know, but I think my songs sound like somebody that's almost great, which I think maybe is better than just being great. Maybe not. I don't know. But I do think that I followed other people's vision for how I should approach the writing, the recording, the
It's such a fine
presentation.
line because you know they're all part of the team, and you know we all want to win collectively together. Like they like
That's
to
right.
use the word "win." We want to win together.
Sure.
And you know they have experience; they've done it before, so there is a roadmap if you
Yeah.
want to follow it. But if you go too far, not trusting your instincts, you know, as you said, instincts are what got you there in the first place. So it's that's always hard to navigate. It's
Yeah.
like how much you ought to be listening and how much you should say, fuck it, I'm going to just do this like my way.
So I guess I don't regret. Regret would be too strong of a word, but I won't do it again. I don't regret taking that instruction or towing, for lack of a better term, towing the company line and all that. But as I made this record, I reasserted that original idea that I'm going to do this on my own and I'm going to do it the way that feels right to me, and that's kind of it.
Yeah.
And it may not be, they may be right. It may not be as good or as sellable or whatever. But it'll just, in my opinion, it'll be right.
I always think as long as you treat even with this podcast, it's like as long as you treat every experience as just a learning experience and you try not to place it any like real value on it other than, hey, I learned something from it. Then everything is okay. It's actually kind of a nice way to live.
Which is still true, because I did learn something from that period.
That's the way it sounds like you're talking about it.
But and I became better for it. I became a better writer for it. I certainly learned production, engineering, and stuff skills to the degree I hadn't known them before. And enabled me to make this record on our own, enabled us to make this record on our own. So without having done that, we wouldn't be able to make the record that we made this time.
Right. Well, with this record, we both read the New York Times article, the piece on you, and you mentioned Julian Baker and Dawes. Like, what other records have you been listening to that maybe influenced this new record?
Oh, so this... Nothing, because I put like a moratorium on any new music at all while I'm making a record.
Interesting.
Which kind of sucks, because I miss out on all this great stuff.
What's the purpose of that? To sort of
I don't want to
be pure?
accidentally rip off somebody
pinch
that's
somebody.
doing something right now, and I also don't want to get too wrapped up in something that's interesting to me right now, but may not be interesting to me 6 months from now. But what's great is when I'm done, I get like this deluge of all this music that came out in the last 2 years, and it's all brand new to me.
Yeah.
And I just get to just dive in and listen like constantly to this music that everybody else is like, what do you mean you just got this record?
That was on the best of list of 2015, my friend.
Yeah. Have you heard the new Strokes record?
Is this it? Yeah.
Well, to me, music is music, but genre is obviously sort of big to a lot of people, whether it's like a punk scene or a grunge scene, and emo in sort of that sort of genre, and you being sort of the forefather of that. 20 years later, how do you relate to sort of the fans and where you were at that time? Do you know what I mean? Like, I'm always fascinated by the idea of like sort of having a genre of music and sort of being a part of a scene, but then obviously still creating music and moving on. Do you still relate to a lot of that stuff? Do you feel like those things still resonate?
Do you mean looking back?
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I grew up listening to music that was called emo that I don't think it influenced the scene I was part of, but I don't think we sounded like that.
Like, what would be an example of a band that you listen to?
Like Sunny Day Real Estate, for example.
Okay.
Sunny Day Real Estate and Saves the Day don't sound like the same band, but they were both called the same genre. And Saves the Day and Dashboard don't sound like the same band, and we were called the same genre. We were lumped into the same genre. And so the fact that it was such an anomalous thing exemplified, I think, that the scene itself was as much about ethos as it was about the content of the music. The term emo, when it was first used to describe not just me, but my peers as well, our era,
Sure,
for lack of a better term, we felt like maybe it was slightly misappropriated, or it was reappropriated, I should say.
Okay.
Because it was like, Sensefield and Sunny Day and all these bands that came before us, they were and Promise Ring, they were the emo bands, and we didn't think we were something like new and exciting and different. We were bucking. We just were like, we had respect for them, and we weren't sure we'd earned the right to be categorized in the same place that they were categorized in. And this is when emo was a neutral term. It was kind of a catch-all for just bands that were connected with their audience on a personal level somehow. That did write emotional songs, but I always have trouble with that because songs are emotional. It's hard to find songs that aren't emotional. And it's kind of like if you use any other term to pick one out of the hat, like hipster.
Sure.
Was like a neutral term that just kind of meant like, these people are into interesting things, artists and things.
They live in the city.
Yeah. And then it became like something that applied to people for people that just dress like the people that were actually into the things.
Mm-hmm. To catch
and
off.
Then it became an insult. And I think the same thing happened with emo. It's just this catch-all term, and then it was first it was catch-all, then it was affectionate, then it was derisive, and now it's sort of making its way back to being like like a positive term.
I think there's
guess.
affection with the term now.
Yeah, I think so too. I mean, there's people that are going to hate the idea of. I remember, I won't say which band said this, but there's a band that said the question was if you could make any band disappear from existence, what would it be? And the band said REM, and that just boggled my mind. And it was they said it was because they sing about their feelings. And I was so perplexed.
There's no indie bands.
Yeah. But I was so perplexed. Like,
doesn't everybody sing about their feelings?
Yeah. So like, I mean, I know in the 50s, like you sang about cars, and
since then,
yeah, I think it's been feelings pretty much since then, right? So yeah, that's a head scratcher to me.
Lastly, I mean, it's always fascinating when you get to a certain level of success and sort of like people that maybe were people you looked up to become peers all of a sudden. Has anyone ever reached out to you where you're like, holy shit, so-and-so has sent me a message or pulled me aside?
Yes.
I feel like you're the guy who probably gets that all the time. Every corner. I wanted to ask this question because I'm like, you must have fans in every corner and every genre who grew up listening to you, who are now big stars. Give us one good one.
I mean, Taylor Swift's pretty popular.
Yeah. I've heard of her.
And then
any hip hop dudes?
Well, like there's that whole new era of hip hop, like Nothing Nowhere, which I was happy to be included on his record. And then there's like Eddie Vedder coming up to me and telling me how much he loves my voice.
Wow,
which blows my mind.
Very cool.
And I know I have a polarizing voice, and he's got such an iconic voice. So that was I appreciated that one. And then there's all these new bands that I love so much, and to hear that they've name checked me after I've already fallen in love with them, it makes me feel pretty proud of myself. I'm not ashamed to say that. I'm proud of myself for that. That if nothing else, somebody that's writing stuff that I'm floored by was inspired in some measure by something I did, just as I was inspired by others.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time, Max. Did you have anything else?
No, that's it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.
Really appreciate it.
That's cool.
Yeah, this is great.
Welcome to everybody's favorite part of the show, the dessert. We are here, as we were off the top, with our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham. Shane,
Yo.
what do you got for us?
Max is always using the pod to promote his band.
That's not true.
Absolutely.
It is.
Yeah.
Why do you think you got so many followers? And you were just promoting Danica, your wife, saying she's the best.
I was.
She's
looking for more followers, by the way.
I wanted to promote my wife for a split second.
Hey.
I want to ask you about this, actually.
We haven't talked about it. I know where this is going.
I know where this is going.
For the last little bit, I guess I've been looking for a passion of mine. So I started listening to Gary Vee, and he's this motivational speaker business dude. And he was basically telling me to find something that when I do it, it gives me energy rather than takes it away, because I can be really lethargic if I'm not super into a project. And then I realized what I'm passionate about is managing maternity blogs. And it's like, I got super into this. I'm obsessed with this world. And my wife is I'm a very bad writer, but I'm a very good idea person. My wife is very good at executing an idea if you give it to her. And she can do it very quickly too. That's a big important part. Anyway, I'll cut to the chase. We started a Instagram account called This Family Tree.
Oh, yeah.
And the name alone took 4 months before we found the name. Like, we've been planning this for quite a while, and I've been keeping it under wraps.
Yeah.
And her first 3 posts, her third post got more likes than my most liked post that I've done after 8 years of having Instagram. So she's already killing it. She's already got 2 sponsorship opportunities, and some big maternity blogger just said, this is my favorite new blog.
Oh. Amazing.
So she got promoted. And I'm not going to start bawling my eyes out here, but I found out my kid has a heart problem now. And it's going to require heart surgery. So it's called coarctation of the aorta.
Okay.
And since the I sang for lupus challenge is dead, I was thinking of doing I sang for coarctation of the aorta.
Rolls off the tongue.
Real nice.
I'm kidding, of course. But if anyone has anything like that going on in their lives, your mom or you're pregnant or you have children, maybe this family tree could help you because my wife, Alex, is a teacher. She's very good at teaching and explaining things and reciting what she's experienced in her pregnancy and stuff like that. So could be worth a follow.
No, it is worth a follow. Go check it out. I'm saying it. I follow it. I follow it on Instagram. That's how I knew, obviously, while I was away, I read that about the heart condition with your unborn daughter. And we chatted a bit about it. And then, of course, when I got back.
But it's funny because the nut has been freaking out on me lately. I guess because I've been demeaning him on the pod.
I guess because
I don't know.
I don't know why he's so upset.
But it's funny because through managing my wife's Instagram account, I kind of understand where his head's at, because when my wife got all these opportunities and these good things happening, I was like, yes! And I was so pumped. I felt like I had done something really good, when in reality, my wife does all the work, really. I just come up with the ideas, but she actually does the hard work. So when I'm jokingly putting the nut down about going to Korea and maybe not deserving to be there, but I kind of do understand why he's getting so heated.
He had an all-timer today that I forwarded to your brother, actually. I took a screenshot.
To my brother, Greg Veerman.
Did you see it?
Australian Greg, as pod listeners know.
And this is no laughing matter, but the post itself was a laughing matter, is that he posted an Insta story of a hospital wristband that he was wearing.
Oh my God.
And it said, I prefer festival wristbands. So, and then in brackets, I'm fine. This was scheduled and not a big deal. Brackets. So, you know, the point is, the nut can make anything into an event.
You know, he's starting a maternity blog.
He is.
Yeah.
All right. Good luck. It's hard work, man.
I had a quick question about the maternity blog. When you said you found out your passion is managing them, had you just been like consuming a ton before you guys jumped into this?
Well, I was just like, Alex, she's really good at writing essays, and anytime I'm writing something, I just give it to Alex and she'll correct it, sort it out, and she can do it in like a second. So I just suggested that maybe she should do it. And then once it was so successful right off the bat, like she's getting like 40 new followers a day, and it's just growing, and people are contacting her, and her inbox is like wall to wall packed with
Has she got any
women.
hate mail?
None.
Because
It's like,
she's so obnoxiously beautiful for a pregnant lady. I think women would just want to kill her.
What I did was I told her, I go, you have a very annoying look. I go, like, your lips are full. The people are going to think you're one of those injection people. You're blonde. You're posing. You're pouting. I was like, post videos of you actually speaking, because Alex has an interesting juxtaposition of looking very good and done up, but talking very relatable and lovable. So once people started seeing how her voice sounded, she got a lot more messages.
Well, this is it, because when people first meet Alex, like if they've never talked to her and just see her in the room, like other women, they want to kill her.
Oh, yeah.
But then when they meet her, everyone's like, I want to fucking kill this bitch, but she's so nice. And she's coming over and we're like making pancakes together. Like,
oh, yeah.
Yeah.
When we were on our first date, I was so nervous. And then she started talking. I was like, I'm cooler than this girl. Like, this is a lock. It's like she doesn't know.
Yeah,
it makes for the perfect blog.
You mean wife?
Yeah.
You mean life partner?
It's a perfect marriage. I'm not in it for free stuff based on Instagram followers. Okay, so I guess I was teasing Birchall on the pod a little bit about maybe not deserving going to Korea, and he messaged me.
You also made a rap about it too.
I made a rap.
You have a single coming out.
I do. But he started messaging me like overly mean stuff, like I'm gonna bash your fucking face in. Wait, I'm just going through some texts here.
You printed them off. We gotta put these on Instagram.
Oh, he goes, basically, Birchall wants to have a boxing match between me and him. And he's convinced himself that he can beat me up and that he's going to break my kneecaps, bash my face in, break my nose.
That's not how boxing works. He immediately goes for the kneecaps.
I guess he was mad about you saying the thing about the iPad also.
Oh, was he?
Yeah, he messaged me all this stuff. And I told him I would apologize, and then he said, no need. I'm just going to bash your fucking face in during this boxing match. And then I go, ha, 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 like to try to play it down. I go, deal. I go, I told my wife the idea, and she was actually worried for my safety. He goes, oh, I'm going to kick the living shit out of you. Make no mistake, I've got a lot of pent-up hostility. I go, who'd have thought a man nicknamed the Nut would have so many issues? He goes, not issues, drive and determination. And he said, and a very underbalanced opportunity to retort against you and Max and your comments.
Wow.
That was very different than my text interaction. I'm going to pull mine up because it was like kind of the opposite.
Well, you're like the star, right? So he's got
to handle you with star gloves.
Sure.
Can't wait to hear these texts.
Yeah, what did he say?
Give us the gist of it.
So the gist of it, yeah, I just called him and I said, oh, hey, man, I was just joking around, we love you, blah, blah. He's like, oh, no problem, all good. And then we just carried on to the next conversation.
There was no mention of violence against Shane?
No, nothing.
He wants to do it at the rally also, which is like one of the biggest shows you guys are doing.
They're still looking for an opening act.
So is this something that can happen?
Well, I mean, here's the thing. Is I don't think we want to promote any more violence in East Hamilton. We want to keep this for, full of love and community. So I don't think we can do it at the rally.
But is this something like, because
what if it was like a after party idea where it's like we rent out like a facility and like it's a boxing match, like,
I would love to do that. I really want to do it. But you think it's a good idea, Mike?
Yeah.
And we'll charge admission and maybe it can go to charity.
I think you and the Nut having a boxing match.
Actually, I don't like it.
No?
No.
Why?
Justin Trudeau was in a boxing match.
Oh, yeah. I guess. I don't know.
Yeah, they got celebrity boxing. Like if Urkel and fucking Betty White can box.
I'd hate to see you guys hurt each other, though.
Do you think Nut would hurt me, though? Honestly?
They hurt each other every time they talk about each other.
That's true. That's true.
It's just
emotional
the kind of
wounds, yeah.
It's the kind of hurt you can't see.
Yeah.
You know what we got to start talking about, because people keep asking, is another live show.
Let's do it. When should we do it?
That could be the climax of the live show.
We'll do it in like May.
May?
May in Hamilton.
When's the rally?
Not till June.
But can we just admit that I would kill the Nut in a boxing match?
My money would be on you.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be surprised if he somehow pulled it off.
Just because you're quicker.
And you're
a
taller.
little more athletic. You're taller, yeah.
Longer arms.
Okay, so I know this is getting overly long, and it's like, how many topics can we talk about? But most important thing here to me is Nathan Fielder.
Right.
And shockingly, you actually came through with the tweeting. I thought you were just bullshitting.
Oh, hey, man.
Is this because you're all like in the moment now? You're like, who cares? Is that why? I feel like you wouldn't do this in the past.
No, I think I would have done it in the past.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, I don't know. My barometer for things like of this nature is kind of based on my gut instinct. And as soon as I heard it, I felt good about it.
So just so people know what we're talking about, Max tweeted through the Arkells account, which has over 60,000 followers on Twitter. He tweeted that I was trying to find Nathan Fielder and I was willing to give Nathan $1 million check for a short 5-minute interview. And he asked his fans to retweet it. And to date, it has 88 retweets.
Pretty good.
Which is pretty good. I was hoping for more. But
well, it's not a maternity blog.
No. Well, you kind of buried it in the Twitter feed too. You like put it up and then you're like, blah, 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 post.
This guy.
Yeah.
You want me to pin it to the top?
That would be amazing. Could you? Okay.
No.
But it did get me a little bit of traction. I got an email from a guy. Like, I'll edit out all this email, but I'll just read it in real time. No. But like quite a long email. So and if you happen to just be like a Dashboard fan and this is your first dessert, go back and listen to Shane's obsession with getting Nathan on the show. Like he said, this is all out of an effort to do that. Because this guy's got some ideas. I think he's a very smart guy and he kind of gets me. And so I want to see what you guys think of these ideas. Okay. So we go, Shane, hope all is well. Okay, first some context. In the late 90s and early 2000s, I was part of a comedy sketch troupe in Toronto. We used to perform at a comedy nightclub called Alt.Comedy Lounge, still running every Monday night at the Rivoli. We got to see a lot of horrible comedy, but also got to see some hilarious folks hone their craft and try some pretty ridiculous shit. A couple of dudes who were always very funny to me were Chris Locke and James Harnett. Chris, I didn't really know that well, but James I went to university with and had shot some comedy sketches with previously. He's easily one of the funniest dudes I've ever met. I still love everything he does. Around that time, my sketch troupe was winding down our comedy efforts and taking on real jobs. I remember seeing videos with James and Chris and this deadpan dude named Nathan. I never met the guy, but I totally remember seeing him around and always thought he was pretty funny. Flash forward and holy shit, Nathan for You is literally the greatest. Here's a sketch of Chris and Nathan that I always loved. Then he sends me a YouTube link. Here's one of James and Nathan. He sends me a YouTube link. Both of these guys are still working comics in Toronto. Chris has put out a comedy album and has a podcast called Utopia to Me. And last year even had Nathan on as a guest. I know James is in touch with Nathan too. And I've seen a couple of tweets back and forth between them and some pics on Facebook. So safe to say they're still buds. Regarding getting in touch with them, Chris on Twitter gives me his information. James gives me his information. Then he says, clearly my name holds zero weight in all of this, but I've got a couple ideas. Here's the ideas. Number 1, infiltrate the comedy scene as an up-and-coming stand-up comic. Get tight with Nathan's Toronto comic friends and parlay it into contacting Nathan. Film the experience on the Cobra Cam. Very Nathan for you, don't you think? Sort of joking, but would make for some pretty amazing content. P.S. We'll cut that part. Number 2. Here's the easier way, and a bit slimy, but hey. I think Chris Locke is actually a legit and worthy guest for your pod. Successful touring Canadian stand-up, album out, on TV. Pretty sure him and James were founders of Last Sabbath, which is a comedy night that is still going strong, and Nathan performed at a bunch. During the interview, you could tell him in your research you found the above clip of him and Nathan, and the hilarious scatting combo ensues. And who knows where things go from there. But at least you're literally talking to a guy who 100% has Nathan's direct contact info. Anyway, all along should I know, but I'm a big fan of Nathan for You and your pod. I would love to see the two collide. I'm 100% cool with you taking any of these ideas and even discussing them on the pod. I just ask that you please don't use my name, as I don't want any to come across of some weird fanboy who's coughing up half-assed information for some sort of gain. Thanks, lads. Keep up the good work, and congrats on the incoming baby.
What's his last name?
What's his last name?
His last name is and his email is at gmail.com. We'll beep all that, of course.
Yeah.
But what do you think of those ideas?
I like those ideas
Great.
a lot. Let's book them.
The idea of you infiltrating the comedy scene and being a stand-up.
That's a long con.
I love that idea. That is a long con.
It's a lot of work.
Maybe I could try that for the 200th if the 100th doesn't work out. I'm totally willing to honestly do it.
You got a maternity blog, and you're going to have a baby. How are you going to find time to be a stand-up all in the service of getting an interview with Nathan?
I work long hours.
We could book a dude, though.
Alex, do you think your husband's having an affair? No, he's actually just aspiring stand-up in order to get an interview.
Okay, but what I'm doing is I'm contacting Chris Locke, and on the next pod, my plan is to have a interview with him. But really, all I'm going to do is probe for Nathan.
Like he'll be
like
in the
ways
dessert?
to get to Nathan. Yeah.
Nice.
So he'll come on in the dessert, and okay. I'm
The usual routine. It's like, hey, want to be on the pod? The rug slips out from underneath them. All of a sudden, they're on the dessert, not even talking to the real host, and they're answering some bullshit comedic questions.
I love it. Hey, did you see another suggestion on Twitter?
Oh,
from Brendan Kennedy.
Oh no, I didn't get that one.
He tweeted, said we should hire the investigator that Nathan hires to track Nathan.
I did
down,
see that,
which I think is kind of funny.
That would be awesome. It just seems unlikely. It was a very funny idea, though. This one's more of a real one, too, that I'm glad you mentioned. A fan named Nicole on Twitter DM'd me. She said, "Hi, guys. My boyfriend has a cousin who is a director in Hollywood. He has reached out to his cousin."
I used to get those letters, too, back when I was young and good looking. We just need a couple of photos, Mr. Veerman.
His cousin is going to reach out to Nathan Fielder's people to try to help make the connection. I will keep you posted on how things progress. I said, amazing. Thanks, Nicole. Then she sends me the text she sent. She goes, "Hey, Brandon, what's up in Tinseltown? I normally wouldn't do this, but Nicole has a connection to a podcast here called Mike on Much, and I was wondering if you would know how to contact Nathan Fielder or be able to point me in the right direction. Thanks, dude." He responds, this director, he goes, "I'm happy to make the connection. Let me see what I can get from him and his team, and I'll get back to you." So I looked up the guy's name, and his name is oddly
Martin Scorsese.
No, it's Steven Spielberg.
His cousin's legit.
Cousin Marty.
But the guy's name is Brandon Nutt.
Whoa.
And he did a movie called hijacked in 2012, and it looks kind of like a Fast and Furious type, maybe straight to DVD, maybe not.
Yeah.
But it looks like in that style of
Totally.
action-packed movie.
I remember Nicole from the live show as well. She was great.
Yeah, it might be Brandon Butt. But either way, it's a very comic name.
It's a lead. Nuts or butts, we'll take it all.
We can end on that laugh. I thought that was a pretty good joke.
That is good.
Wait, the name? Oh, it's Brandon Nutt. Isn't that odd?
I like the last joke.
Yeah, well, we'll find a joke. There's lots of laughs. That's it, guys. Thanks.
Sweet.
That's it. That's all. That's our episode. Thank you so much for tuning in. Thank you to Chris Carrabba from Dashboard Confessional for joining us for a conversation.
The Mike on Much podcast can be found online at Mike on Much for Instagram and Twitter. As I said earlier in the show, if you like the show, give us a rating in iTunes. Huge thank you to Jenna Gregory and Tara Paquette, the ladies who put together the artwork for the show. Huge thank you to Webmaster Dan, Greg Stewart for letting us use his office, Boss Man Justin,
Yeah, Sarah McLaren, Mike McShane.
the whole gang.
Yeah. We'll see you in the future, and we might all be going to the Junos.
Maybe.
Yeah.
Working on that.
That's another Mike McShane shout out right there. Mike on Much podcast is produced by Max Kerman. I'm your host, Mike Veerman. See you next week if we don't die on the weekend.